Welcome to Don't Mind Me, I'm Different, the podcast where I kick down the barriers and myths surrounding ADHD in the workplace. Whether it's navigating the office chaos, trying to break this stigma, or learning what is this thing called ADHD, I'm here step by step to advocate, educate, and empower you in any way that I can. Get ready to own your difference and shine on the job. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. I am not a professional. I am just a guy sharing his experience with ADHD. And if you do need help, please reach out to a professional, because there are many out there that can really make a huge impact in changing your life. Welcome back to Don't Mind Me, I'm Different. In this episode, I had the pleasure and honor of chatting with the Megs Crawford, ADHD organizing coach and fellow podcaster from the show Organizing an ADHD Mind. And she talks about how she came to discover her ADHD, how she embraced it and was able to quit her job to follow her heart, helping women to organize their spaces and their lives. And more importantly, how she always has such an amazing energy and attitude. So Megs, can you tell me what is your ADHD origin story?
Oh, my ADHD origin story. I have known about ADHD my whole life, but never even considered that it was a thing that affected me. I do remember in college thinking, like, wow, these people with Adderall are so lucky. They could actually study. But I just thought I was someone who couldn't study, that couldn't focus long enough on something that didn't necessarily interest me very much. So it wasn't until after I had kids that I started to realize that like anxiety was pretty prevalent in my life and just like overthinking and constantly ruminating over things that were going on. But it was about 2 or 3 years now that I got diagnosed. And I started seeking out a diagnosis because I was working with a therapist and I was getting my master's degree at the time. And I remember she said that I was doing too much. Or I was trying to handle too much. And I was like, don't you dare. But in the same breath, I was like, well, doesn't everyone's brain work like this? Like, isn't this everyone? And she's like, no, not everyone's brain works like this. She's like, I think it could benefit you to figure out if you have ADHD or not. And I was like, wow, okay. So I went through the diagnosis process, and it was pretty immediate that the doctor was like, oh, yeah, you absolutely have ADHD. I got a prescription, but then I went through a denial period where I was just like, I don't even know what this means. How could I have gone my entire life not knowing that I have ADHD? And now it's literally something that someone could diagnose me in 5 seconds. And so that was fascinating to me, but also just like, there's no way that they know what they're talking about. It turns out that she knew exactly what she was talking about. I guess that's why you go to medical school and whatnot. But I read the book Faster Than Normal by Peter Shankman, and that book helped me see myself for the first time through someone else who could actually understand how my brain worked. Like, I just remember I was listening to the book on Audible. That's how I consume most of the books I listen to. And I was painting my bathroom because I'm constantly in this creative state where I'm always trying to redo something in my home. And I was listening to the book and painting at the same time. I remember crying because I felt seen. I remember laughing because I felt like, oh my gosh, like I like these eureka moments were coming through me. And it just felt like I wasn't alone for the first time out there. I'm like, look at this guy who wrote a damn book on the subject. And now I felt more empowered knowing there were other people out there using their brain for something really, really good. And so that was the start of my journey and understanding my brain more. And now, 2 to 3 years later, here I am and have my own podcast and my own business supporting women with ADHD and men. Whoever wants to listen to my podcast, like jump on. But yeah, that's where I am now.
Wow, that's so awesome. So for the guest, the name of your podcast is Organizing an ADHD Brain.
Yeah, organizing an ADHD brain.
So yeah, I really related to when you were talking about that denial period. And for me, it's like sometimes I'll be doing so well and feeling so good and remembering all this stuff that I'm like, I completely think that, what do I really have ADHD? Was this all just like some weird bad nightmare that I woke up from? Um, and but then there's those times where like I forget something that I normally do. Like it's okay to forget something every once in a while. Everyone does that. But like I'm talking about like your keys, or like the other day when I was opening my locker, and in the middle of it,
Yeah.
I guess somebody was talking to me and I completely forgot what the locker code. And I've been opening that locker at my work for like
Yeah.
over 2 years, like pretty much since I started working there. And for the life of me, I could not remember it. Luckily, I had it written down somewhere. But I tried several times to to see if I could remember it, and I was off by like a few numbers. And if I hadn't have been doing the work that I've been doing, in understanding who I am,
Oh,
like
completely.
that would have like really destroyed me, or I would have been so frustrated and and confused at how could I have forgot something that I've been doing for so long. And that kind of like is a great reminder that I still have this and I've still got a lot of work to do. So I hope you're up for this. I'm gonna switch it up a little bit, and that kind of like
rapid
is
fire
a great
questions.
reminder that I still have this.
So come
and
straight
I've still
off the
got
top
a
of
lot
your
work
head.
to do. You ready? Is that cool? So
Yeah, I love it. Let's do it.
So first question is, what do you do when you first wake up?
Journal.
Okay, so if you could have any superpower, what would that be?
To make any business idea I have a reality overnight.
Cool. So what's your go-to comfort food?
uh Ruffles, sour cream and onion potato chips, but they have to have the waves in them. They can't just be like regular potato chips.
Whoa, why the waves?
There's a certain kind of crunch I'm aiming for. Like there's this like it's the texture of food, right? And like the flavor. So like the flavor morsels have to be there, but also the crunch. The crunch is such an important quality, but like not a crunch from a carrot, a crunch from a chip. That is key.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So describe yourself in 3 words.
Oh, positive, empathetic, loving.
Oh, nice. Positive, empathetic, and loving. Cool. That's good.
Mhm.
So what's the last show you binge watched?
The Office, but only because we've seen it multiple times, so it's just on in the background for, like, comfort. Yeah.
Is that like your comfort show?
Oh, totally.
Okay. So are you a morning person or a night owl?
Oh, I'm absolutely a night owl because that's been my whole life, but I also wake up at 5 a.m. So, I think I'm, like, trying to cross this threshold that I didn't know existed. Because I actually get things done in the morning. Like I can wake up and I'm so super productive because I've got like this routine I follow and my kids aren't up yet and then my husband's not up yet. So there's no distractions aside from the things that I want to get done. So, but I also have a very hard time letting things go at night to get to bed at a reasonable hour.
So that's like your me time.
Yeah. And I don't want to sacrifice that.
Yeah. That makes sense. So if you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
Okay, the first thing that came to mind was Bora Bora because I feel like there's a bungalow sitting over the water with my name on it. I feel like there's this hammock there that I can like hang out in, but I can look underneath and there's fish swimming underneath and there's probably a private pool that's attached to my bungalow. Yeah, I think that's where I'd go to like disconnect. Heck yeah.
Bora Bora. That sounds about awesome right now.
Yeah, it does.
So what's your biggest pet peeve?
Probably when people put themselves down, uh, and I do it too, but likely because I've seen family members of mine put themselves down their whole lives, but I've constantly said, "That's not true. How could you believe that about yourself?" But they don't do any of the work to change it. And I think our brains are just inherently negative, right? And we seek out that cortisol that like it creates because we're like we think that that's the norm is putting ourselves down. And there's so much more to life than constantly beating yourself up because when you build yourself up and talk to yourself in a positive way, even if it's not constant, the things that you're able to do are fascinating. So, I'm not saying it because I'm perfect and I don't beat myself up because it still happens. I feel like that comes with ADHD, especially like the stories we tell ourselves and what's happening up here. But when you understand that you're in control of your thoughts and you start to practice turning it around, I don't know, it's really fascinating. But I say that and I have to explain this because I don't look at it and then judge you for putting yourself down. It's more like I see it and I'm like, this again, right? Like this is the same thing you've been doing over and over and over and over. This can't be good for you because I've seen how it can't be good for myself. And so I think that's probably my biggest pet peeve. Otherwise, I'm very accepting of life. Like chew with your mouth open. I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me unless I'm like really, really focused in on sounds. And then I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, that can be annoying. I can see how that can resonate with you though. So, what's your favorite way to relax after a long, hard day?
Oh, um, lately, it's probably been hanging out with my girls, finding a movie that like we all haven't seen before, having popcorn, and all watching the movie together without technology, um, aside from the TV. But like nobody's on their phones, everybody's just hanging out and watching the movie together. That's probably my favorite. But if I was alone, probably a hot bath and like a good book I'm listening to or a podcast.
Of course, yeah. That does sound nice. What is your guilty pleasure song that you secretly love?
um, Probably A Thousand Miles by Vanessa Carlton, I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
I think it's like it's totally from my teenage years, but yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, no, definitely. Train. Mine is Train. I can't remember the song. It's like, hey, girlfriend. Yeah, I forget. But yeah, that's cool how you know the name of that song.
Oh, I'm a music freak. Like I love all
So if you
music.
could switch anyone and be anyone for a day, who would it be?
Ooh, switch places with anyone for a day? Like my first answer is I wouldn't because I really like the life that I live, that I've created for myself, but I also then thought maybe the president of the United States because I was a political science major and that stuff is fascinating to me. And so I'd love to know just like what goes into that life.
Cool. What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh, okay. Candidly, I don't eat a lot of weird things because texture is important to me. And I'm trying to think. I think I probably had, I mean, I've had snails before or frog legs, but I feel like those are so common in different countries that I guess it's just weird to me. So, yeah, but they were both pretty good.
Well, I've never had either, so yeah. So were they any good?
Yeah, the snails were really salty, but the frog legs, I don't really remember, but people say that they taste like chicken, so that's probably what they I feel like they were more meatier than chicken. It was yeah.
Yeah, I mean because they like have a lot of muscles jumping around all that, right?
Yeah. Right? Exactly.
So what's your favorite memory from childhood?
My favorite memory? Oh, this is the first one that came to mind is I grew up on a farm, so like super out middle of nowhere, 17 acres, and I used to run around outside when all the time. Um, but I remember having a friend over one day and I had just met her and we were having a play date and it started raining outside and we stayed outside. We didn't run inside. We just stayed and played in the rain. And we were both in 4th grade at the time and I just remember getting soaked. It was that kind of rain that just like you can see it coming and like it almost just like envelops the place that you're in with like saturation, but we got so soaking wet. We were dancing and we were laughing and we were just enjoying being outside and not worrying about staying dry. And it felt, yeah, I remember that pretty vividly. It's a good memory.
Okay, yeah, that does sound fun. So what's one thing you can't live without?
Probably my husband and my kids.
That is a real thing.
Uh, but if we're talking like material things, um, silly putty.
Silly putty, interesting. So what do you like? You like fidget a
Yeah.
lot? Okay. So
hmm
that's perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's literally what helps me concentrate in the corporate world. Like I would just have it in front of me and it would help me not try to check emails at the same time and not try to do like 80 other tasks. I could just be present and be in the moment because my hands were doing something.
If you could be any historical figure, who would it be?
Any historical figure. Michelle Obama. I guess she's not really historical. She's more present day. Okay, Albert Einstein. Mostly because I heard that his wife had a lot to do with his success, and I'd like to really hear that story a little bit more.
Yeah, interesting. All right. The last one. This is the last one, I promise.
hmm
What's a job you're terrible at?
Oh, I'm laughing because I think that anything that I do in the beginning, I would be terrible at. But then I'm like, but I can conquer anything. But some things that I'm terrible at, I think right now, as far as jobs go, is marketing and finance. So things in that field, especially when related to business, but also, um, yeah, there's nothing I can't conquer. But right now, I feel pretty terrible at those two things.
I know, yeah. Marketing and social media. I wish those didn't exist. It's just like I was just like around them.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Okay, cool. Well, that was fun. That was interesting.
Yeah, that was awesome.
how do you get this much energy this early in the morning? I don't know if I could ever have that level.
Yeah. I I'm a pretty positive person, I think, on a regular basis. And I have super tapped into the feelings I want to have on a regular basis. So um that's what I focus on. So like in the corporate world, I was so miserable. I would get up and go through the motions and just kind of expect things to happen. And I was letting life happen to me, right? Instead of being in control. I mentioned earlier, like, I really like the life that I've created for myself. And it's because I realize how much I am in control of my own reality. So I remember even in the corporate world, I was still positive, right? Like I still did this. I led a team of people. And I remember thinking then, I'm like, "Ugh, I think I'm too positive for people. I need to tone it down a little bit." But then I'm like, no, fuck it. Like, this is who I am. I just need to show up as who I am. And if people don't like it, then they don't like it. So yeah, I've really focused on the emotions that I want to bring forward. It doesn't mean that I don't get depressed and I don't have bad days and I don't like shit still happens, but I look at it in a way that allows me to learn and grow from it. Like, if stuff happens that I'm not expecting or I'm, because life is happening all around us, then I choose to figure out like why is this happening? Like what am I supposed to learn from this? Because that in itself will allow this to happen differently next time or I don't know, allow me to handle it differently. So yeah, I think my positivity just has been my whole life. I have a mom who's deaf and so seeing her interact with the world has been really fascinating. And she always had a smile on her face, like no matter how she was feeling or how whether she could hear someone speak or not, she always had a smile on her face. And so I learned to mimic her. And so I think part of it is mimicking. Like I learned how to smile my whole life because I saw my mom doing it. But then at the same time, I think that I've desired to be happy. Like I thought that happiness came from a promotion. I thought that happiness came from like making it big or doing like these huge things and achieving. But then I realized like it's within me and it's like I am the carrier of that. And so I just have to look within and it's also I'm teaching my girls, like I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, so not only am I learning for myself, but I'm also teaching them and I want to be the role model that they deserve and they're going to be different than I am, but I want so like talking to them about it has helped because I'm able to explain it in a different way and support them through their own thoughts and their own like my daughter is 7 is she has ADHD for sure. And so just like helping her understand like what to do with that. And it's been such a fascinating journey to be on. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely so. You draw a lot from your mother, I take it, and I definitely, yeah, I'm a mama. I'm a mama's boy
Mhm.
myself, and I like to run everything by my mom, and she actually had a difficult time with because she's in New Mexico now, doing some great things with physical therapy. She's like a physical therapist there, and she's always supported me and
Wow.
believed in me. And I don't know where I would be without her. She's like she's really about this podcast and trying to get them involved over there. And no, yeah,
Love that.
I mean it must be difficult. Your daughter has ADHD and you know that like what struggles lie ahead for her and how that's going to be. Also, the podcast that I've heard you bring them up a lot as a source of encouragement and learning. It's awesome
Yeah.
that you've developed that and incorporated that like into who you are instead of just like
Yeah.
this This
Yeah.
needs to stay right here, and this needs to be over there. And this is who I am. And you can either accept it or not.
Well, I have a funny story about my daughter if you want to hear.
Okay.
Um yeah, I think it's so crazy being a mom to a little girl who has ADHD because that was me, right? And I had like these emotional outbursts. People used to make fun of me because I would throw tantrums all the time. And now I'm just like, hold on, that we know where that came from. Like that that's very eye-opening. But it's also funny because I'm learning so much about myself, and my husband has ADHD, so it's natural that we have a daughter with ADHD. But last night we walked into our bedroom because my girls were about to take a bath. They needed to get their pajamas and their underwear. So we're in their room and my daughter starts putting her pajamas on. And I was like, girl, we're taking a bath. Like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, mom, well, you know what it's like with ADHD. Sometimes you just forget. And I'm like, I don't even know where you came from. But I'm like, why don't you grab your underwear? Let's go to the bathroom. And she opens the drawer and she grabs a pair of socks and she's walking away so confidently. I was like, girl, you're not grabbing the right thing. And she's like, oh, ADHD. It was just so cute because she's 7, right? And like she's got this concept of how her brain works already. And I think it's cool because she gives us grace when it comes to forgetting. And she has to remind us sometimes when like she asks us to do something. She there was something that she wanted something was, I think one of her stuffed animals had ripped and she really wanted my husband to sew it. I was like, I'm the sewer, but that's fine, ask him. So she wrote him a note and put it on his bedside table and was like, here, can you sew this back up for me? And it was so adorable because, like, she's leaving us notes, she's, like, setting up reminders. She even told her teacher at school, she wanted to move desks, and her teacher didn't do it the first night. So the next day, she was like, "Here, I'll write you a sticky note, or can you write a sticky note for yourself so that you don't forget?" So it's just like she's coming up with these ways to, like, remind herself of these things, and I provoke that too, like, if she wants to do something, but she's scared that she's gonna forget, I'm like, how could you remind yourself? Like, what's something that would trigger you to remember that, like, you wanna finish this drawing or you wanna do this coloring project or something like that. So, it's kinda
Mhm.
cool the things that we're doing with her
Right.
now so that she can
Yeah.
learn so much more
Wow.
about her brain for the future.
Oh, that's awesome. That she kind of sees you. You're doing your own like strategies, and that's impressive. Cause like, I know I hated writing down notes. I
Yeah.
didn't even need it. I didn't think I needed it, even
Yeah.
though I never remember. Right.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where I'm like, I'll write the list and then I'll forget it, or I'll bring the list and I forget to
Yeah.
look at it at the list and still forget something that I need.
Yeah, totally.
It's on the, I'm good, and I'm okay with that. Because it's like, for some weird reason, I thought I was going to be good
Yeah.
at remembering stuff. Like, I thought I had a semi photographic memory, which isn't a real thing with us. That's crazy. So, you know, you said you were diagnosed like
Yeah.
2 years ago and you're already running your own show and business. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And how did you get the motivation and determination to do just that?
Yeah. I think it happened by taking action. I used to run this presentation. I love presenting. So I love in the corporate world, I used to give presentations on growth and how to like better yourself by taking classes or figuring out where you wanted to go. Like I loved giving presentations on that. And so one of the presentations that I would give was like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And not necessarily having a 5-year plan, but think about like, do you want a corner office, right? Like I was very corporate, but like what does 5 years from now look like? Okay, what are some big things you need to do in order to get there? Name them. Like, do you need to get a degree? Do you have to like, I don't know, move to a different country? Like, what are some big things? And then like bring it back even more. And what's the tiniest step that you could take in the direction of what it looks like 5 years from now? And through that, it's kind of fascinating because I became certified to teach manifestation after I left the corporate world. And that's literally it. Like, you know what you want, what are the big things? And then what's one step to get there? So when I left the corporate world, I started out as a professional organizer. And I wanted to do that because I have been decluttering my own home and trying to figure out how to get it organized for so long that I was like, "Oh, I'm good at this." I'm fairly I know how not great I was at that point, but now knowing what I know, I wanted to teach people how they could have these beautiful spaces. And originally I thought it was going to be like buying the perfect product and like putting things in the right spaces. But as I took action and started working for people and decided I wanted to start a podcast, I realized how different my perspective was having ADHD, and then working with people, how different their perspective was on letting go and like the stuff in their home and what it was doing to them. And so I started to become way more passionate about understanding my brain and how it worked so I could teach other people how to work with their brain instead of against it. Because so often we see or we hear how we're supposed to be. Like, people with ADHD aren't organized, or people with ADHD are forgetful, and it's a disability, right? But I wanted to teach people with ADHD that you can be organized. You just have to learn how to work with your brain, and you're not going to be freaking good at it right away. I mean, that's just case in point. That's why you listen to podcasts. That's why you listen to the experts and read the books, because things that we do in the beginning, right? Like, it's just starting out, we're just not going to be good at it. And so that is why I started the podcast, is because I want people to understand that like part of it is the doing, is the action part of it, but part of it is also just understanding what's going to inhibit you and what things are going to hold you back, because then you can start to challenge and ask questions like, how could I do it differently next time? And like, what didn't work because my brain works this way? And how could I do this in a way that could support like the lifestyle I want to live and the way that I want to experience life? And so I think the motivation, I have ups and downs, right? Like, there's times during the year where I'm like gung ho, ready to take action and like doing all the shit. But then there's times during the year where I go through lows and I'm just like, why is life? And what am I doing with life? But because I've looked at that from a place of like, why did I go through that? And like, how could I go about that differently next time? I'm able to understand myself in a new way so that like the next time I hit a low, I can do something to help myself get out of it quicker. And so, yeah, there's times I don't want to do anything at all, or I want to hide from the world. And then there's times that I want to take a ton of action. So it just kind of depends on where I'm at. But I think that's normal. I think any human goes through that. So just like knowing what to expect is half the battle, and knowing that like it's okay that you're going through a low. It's okay that you don't know where to start. It's okay that you don't know where to get your motivation from right now. You're acknowledging that like that's where you are. And so what is that teaching you? As I don't know. It's hard to say like what is not having motivation teaching you, because like sometimes that's teaching us nothing except that we want to stay in bed all day. But I mean, there's so much that we can learn from the different steps we take in life. And yeah, it, that's hopefully that answers everything.
Yeah. Oh, so you were doing the coaching, so how did you get how did you set that up so like people can actually find you? Was it like something that just happened like passively, or how did that work?
Yeah. I started coaching. Well, I've been coaching in the corporate world since I got a team. I I think back in 2015, 15 or so, I started coaching, and I loved it. And so, like, I did so much more in the corporate world than like what my job title was because there was so much that I wanted to do to influence others and to help people believe in themselves. So when I would start coaching, I would build spreadsheets and I would show people like where they were and where they're going and help them achieve their goals versus me telling them what they should do. And so it's been a passion of mine for a long time. But when I went into the organizing world, I remember asking another organizer, I'm like, "Do you organize for people or with people?" And I her answer was so clear. She was like, "Well, I do whatever they want me to do, but it's harder when I'm organizing for people because, it's not as clear what they want and oftentimes I'll do something, but then I'll come back and it's messed up the next time I come back because, it didn't work for them." That was a turning point for me to help me understand, like, wow, that makes organizing so much harder. How could you possibly organize for someone without knowing them and knowing how they live their life? But I didn't get it right away. I kept organizing for and with people and really just experiencing what that looked and felt like at the end of it. And almost 100% of the time when I would organize for someone, the results were totally different. Even when I organized for my husband, like I tried doing something, he sells beer for a company here in Colorado, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do this for him for the back of his car." And I started organizing his supplies cuz he gives out like free t-shirts and like coasters and things like that. And when he came home, before I told him what my solution was, I started asking him some questions, and based on his answers, I was like, "Oh my god, nothing that I would have done for him would have been a solution for what he needed." And it was because I asked him these questions that I truly understand how I could provide ease in his life. And so I think coaching for me is this incredible way of listening to people so that I can understand them in a way and provide solutions, but also help them figure out the solutions for themselves. Ask the right questions so that like you can give yourself the answers that you need. So the way I transitioned my own business into coaching is I realized first that I only wanted to organize with people and not for people. But through that, I realized there was so much that I could do by teaching people the things that I already knew, but also asking them questions so that they could understand certain things about themselves. Like, do you even believe that you can be an organized person? Because if you don't believe that that's at all possible, you're going to look for every piece of evidence that proves that you can't be organized, which guess what? You're going to find a lot of that if you've never organized before and you failed a lot in the beginning because that's literally everything that we've done that's new, right? You're going to be bad at anything that you start that's new. So that's what I really love about coaching is like it provides you this tool of someone who's going to continue to push you along and like get you out of your comfort zone because it's easy to stay there when you're just trying to challenge yourself. But when you have someone asking you these questions that allow you to discover these beautiful things about yourself and how capable you are, you get to achieve these new heights. So through coaching, I just felt like I could just really help people make these bigger changes in their life versus just organizing a space, versus just saying, use this product, it's going to change your
Okay,
life.
yeah.
Because there's literally no product out there that's going to change your life. It's about what you're doing and what you believe.
Yeah, there's no magic pill to anything or solution like that
No.
that you can take to make this life better, you know. And
Yeah.
I used to wish that that was the case, but honestly, like the work
Right.
that it takes to get better is so worth it. And it continues to grow and transform. The reason why I asked this is because I'm actually thinking about developing a coaching program for people like me who are depressed and are introverts and deal with ADHD, can become social to help with that, because how it's affected my life. Yeah, I'm still working on that, how and what that's
Yeah.
going to look like, because I want to have it where it's it's fully functional, and I'm still developing it in my own personal life. That's interesting that you ask questions about what they want and what that would be like. Like a question, what would be a question like you would ask? Like,
Yeah.
do you have an example?
Oh, yeah, let's do this. Okay, well, tell me, do you feel like you're an organized person? I'm gonna just go like, let's just do it. Like, do you feel like you're an organized person?
I feel I'm pretty highly organized for someone with ADHD.
Yeah. Okay. So there's always room for growth when it comes to organizing or building your life in any way possible, shape, or form. What's the biggest change you would need to happen in the next 3 months for you to say that the beginning of 2025 has been successful?
Oh, okay. So the next 3 months is going to be is getting better at, I'm going to try to work at getting better at my days and how they look, and like that I know what I'm going to do on a weekly basis as far as what I'm going to be doing for this week and the next week or on this day type thing.
So, like more of a better plan, a better like structured day, or more of like getting certain specific things done during the week. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it would probably just be like how what my week's going to look like and not being so spontaneous. Like it's okay to have a little bit of spontaneity because I feel like I need that.
Mm,
But some of it's like I need to know what I'm going to be doing because what I'm trying to do right now is still
for sure.
very uncharted territory for me.
So, what is getting in your way of making a plan for your weeks right now?
I don't know, just probably they'll figure it out and actually getting to the organizing part of it. I still think I'm fighting with that spontaneity, getting too much to be like totally commit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think we get so lost in the spontaneity because, like, it's so easy to be spontaneous, right? And impulsive. I had a client recently say to me that she started to look at the difference between spontaneity and impulsivity and like the different feelings that those words created around like the things that she was doing without thinking too much about it. I thought that was fascinating. But coming back to your situation, have you ever sat down to look to like really think about what a planned week might look like?
Yeah, I tried it and then just like, I don't know, some of the stuff actually happened and I only really did like one of the things. So it was like a whole month that I had planned out, and that ended up getting totally rearranged and changed around, and pushed back, and some of the stuff didn't even happen. Um, it's still uncharted territory when it comes to what I need to be doing. Because sometimes I go to work overtime, and that throws it off. And
Yeah.
this is part of it. So, because I'm working full time and I don't know how much time I can really commit on a
Yeah.
day to day basis, it's hard
Ooh.
to organize that.
Okay, so that's so fascinating because you just identified something that's going to throw a wrench in your plan. If you're having to work overtime, anything that you've planned is now getting pushed off. And so, how would you flex to that if that were to come up again? And another question that you could ask yourself, or I'll ask you, is what would you do differently now, looking at what happened last time, to plan your weeks for the next couple months?
So I guess creating a flexible plan, like say, well, I think this could happen on this day, then maybe I should adjust it accordingly, type thing. like kind of plan for the chaos a little bit
Yeah.
or whatever, however you call that, the like an unplanned event.
I think it's what's so interesting about having a plan for things is like it's never going to go as planned. Like, I mean, we can plan to our death, right? Like we can have a plan for literally everything and it's never going to go perfectly. And I think part of us doesn't like that. And we work really well with like just doing things and taking actions and getting stuff done. But I'll tell you, even with my podcast, I do it on Sundays. Like I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, I know I have to release a podcast tomorrow. It's one of my favorite things to do. But because I'm waiting till the last minute, it feels like this weight on my shoulders. But before the holidays, I actually recorded, planned, and then scheduled everything out. And it was one of the coolest things that I've ever done. And I've been doing this for almost a year. And I literally just planned a whole day that I could focus on the podcast. I didn't let anything else get in my way when it came to that. And so I love that you identified that there's something coming up that, like, when something else happens, nothing else gets done to plan, but now you can modify with that. And part of this too is like we love to overcomplicate things and change things all at once, where we're like, oh, it's New Year's. Well, I'm going to give up sugar. I'm not going to drink anymore. And I'm going to like go to the gym every single day. Except that that's way too much for us to change all at once. And so, like, what's one thing? What's one thing you can identify? And so, part of what I do as a coach is like break it up into the smallest task imaginable so that you can start to identify where you can change things. And so, like, I would go on to ask you, when do you want to plan? Like, when is a good time for you to plan? Because if you don't take the time to actually plan, you're never going to plan. And so, how are you going to remember that you're going to plan? Because, like, I have these great ideas during the day, but then at night, I forget that there's certain things that I want to do. So, how are you going to remind yourself? Like, what is that going to look like? And are there too many things trying to pull you in all these different directions right now? So, I think what's really neat about being a human is that like you know enough about your life and what you need to have the answers within you. It's just really about asking yourself the right questions to get to those answers and to know what you want and to know what that end result is. But part of it too is to know where you want to go and to know what you're trying to achieve because you can start to work backwards from that to take really, really tiny steps in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so what would you say is the strangest thing you ever found organizing?
Um, one of my clients I wouldn't say this is strange, but I think what's mind-boggling to me is I didn't understand. Okay, I'll explain what I found and then I'll explain how I felt about it. I have a client who had a stack of gift cards like that high, like so many gift cards. And I was like,
Okay.
how do you
That is
have so
strange.
many without knowing that you have them? But I now understand so much more, right? This is like part of the beginning of my journey. And I'm just like, I think I didn't even realize how much money people have hidden in their homes because they don't realize they've either have it anymore or because like it's not something they necessarily need, right? Or that's benefiting them in their life. Um, but yeah, that was fascinating to see how many gift cards. But what are like I found some really interesting kitchen utensils. I have a client who uh I think it's fun to see people's reactions to things. I think that's probably the coolest thing is like people realizing the things that they have because they haven't taken the time to go through them and now I'm making them. So that's probably pretty cool too. But I haven't found anything too ridiculous. One of my clients, she had her husband's ashes up on a shelf So I would always come in and be like, "Hey, buddy," right? Like pretend he was there with me, and us as we were organizing. So no, I mean like nothing too out of the ordinary at this point yet. But definitely an abundance of gift cards and stamps and money and yeah, it's interesting.
Cool. And you talked a little bit about what are some of the biggest struggles in the beginning of like doing this, and what you did to push through it.
Yeah. So I would say the
Mm,
biggest struggle in the beginning is getting
yeah.
started. Is
Mm,
people don't know where to start because we think that it has to be
okay.
perfect. Um, and we have this
Yeah.
all or nothing mentality, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to get it done in a weekend. I used to do
Yeah.
this too, where I would empty an entire closet
Okay.
and then try to
Yeah.
put it back perfectly and
Okay.
meticulously and with like with all of these new things that I bought to make it organized and perfect. And part of what I didn't understand is I just had too much stuff. And so as far as the getting started thing goes is like taking a look at your home and realizing what is the space that is the most frustrating to you. And you might say, well, it's all frustrating to me, right? Like I don't know where to start because it's all so frustrating to me, right? And we see this clutter as a whole. Like it is our whole lives. And how could we possibly make progress in 15 minutes or in 5 minutes even? Or I don't have time to do all of this. And so that's part of it too. Um, so like the getting started piece is probably the biggest thing, but the hurdle that we achieve there is just like understanding that there's no perfect place to start. You don't have to have a perfect place. It's just about starting. And you don't have to do it in a whole weekend. You don't have to spend hours hyper focusing on this. You can do 5 minutes, and that's enough. And I know we're time blind in general, whereas like time doesn't necessarily mean anything to us. And that's why we can make an appointment at 2 in the afternoon, but then like we can't get anything done in the morning because we're just like, no, I have to be prepared for this appointment that I have at 2 in the afternoon. There's nothing else that I'm doing until then. Right. But like when we start to gain control of that time by like setting timers or just understanding that we don't have to rush through getting this done and it's okay if I just pick up a piece of trash or just give one thing a home, breaking it down into these small increments again is so huge. But I think another thing that I work with my clients is that you also have to change a part of yourself when you're getting organized. And like, I don't think you realize it at first, but I interviewed a woman, Dana K. White. She's amazing. She writes this blog called A Slob Comes Clean. And I just released an episode today on my podcast. She talks about how she used to be the person who found all the great deals and was the bargain shopper and like got this for $2 and how cool is that? But she had to let go of that, which was a part of her identity in order to not have as much in her home. She didn't need to be the hero in every story. And that's what I tell my clients too is like we love to come up with a reason to keep things and to like have everything that we could possibly need in a moment because what if this is who I want to be 3 months from now? And what if I need this button because there's a pair of pants that needs a button? But like the truth is that if I needed a button, I would go out and buy a button. But I don't think in my entire life I've ever needed a button that's come with a pair of pants. And like, so it's like recrafting the way that we think about the stuff that we have and the things that we think we need. I posted a video on TikTok last year as I was cleaning my garage and I had like this bucket of nails. And at first I was like, let me meticulously pull all of these nails out and sort them into like an organized pile and then figure out what to do with them. And then I was like, oh, Megan, what are you doing? Why would you do that? Like, first of all, you're never going to come to this pile to find a nail, right? But like, what if you just threw them out? And I did. I threw them out and I like made a video about it and people were in uproar about it. They were like, "What the hell are you doing? You could have donated those to Habitat for Humanity," was one of the comments. And I was like, "If I'm not going to use them, why would Habitat for Humanity use these nails?" It was like a small little container, but like that's the thing, we want to like economically repurpose everything in our homes. But when we say that that is like the belief that we have and what we need to do, we stop letting things go because then there adds this additional barrier to letting things go and to getting things done. So I try to remove those barriers when I'm working with people to help them understand that like you're empowered to make these decisions and it's okay if you make full decisions, because when you let things go, you start to realize how much it opens up in your life to have these new experiences and to do new things where your stuff is not the number one priority anymore.
Yeah, and it takes a certain level of strength to be able to let
Oh my
go of
gosh.
something, and sometimes it doesn't work. You just got to let go of like one
Yeah.
thing at a time. I remember on one of your podcasts that you talked about having another place for this. Like, do I have, um, like this saved digitally, like a bill, and could I potentially get rid of this massive pile of whatever? And I'm getting to be a little more organized because of that. Like a place where I put all my important bills in this little bin, and I, just put it there, and I don't worry about it for 3 months, and then I was putting that stuff away, and I was able to get
Yeah.
rid of one thing, but there was so many other things where I'm just not ready for it. Like there's this voice in the back of your head that's saying, "Oh, you're gonna need this. Don't get rid of it." Like we were talking about, we convince ourselves that like a pile of nails is something that I need to organize right
Right?
now because that's going to be fun, or that needs to be done, and I kind of get wrapped up into it, and I'm like, I've got to take a step back
Yeah.
and say, does this really need to be done right now? Or even breaking that task up into smaller parts and just questioning
Hmm.
things that we're doing impulsively is huge, and that's really helped me. So,
Yeah.
do you
But
actually
it's
have a
organized.
Junk
is
drawer.
it
I
really?
actually I freaking love junk drawers because like I love the concept of being able to go to a drawer to find like a ton of miscellaneous items. But I have seen so many, and I'm sure so many of us can relate, whoever's listening, is that like you go to the junk drawer and you can't find a damn thing because there's so much junk in there. Like that's where you throw the extra little containers of nails or like the drywall anchors because you didn't actually use them for the thing that you bought, but like what if one day and you throw them in there, or you throw the allen wrench and then you throw like a screwdriver, but then you also have scissors in there and there's tape, but then what happens is that nothing actually returns there when you take it out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but more often than not, the junk drawer is just this overwhelming um, doom pile of stuff. And so I think I have a video out there somewhere of me just emptying my junk drawers, throwing a bunch of stuff away that I knew I didn't need anymore, and then just creating spaces for things. Like I have a place for all the scissors, and that's one of the things that I challenge people to do is like, hey, do nothing else except for say, where would I go to look for scissors if I were trying to find them? And then go put them there and then get all the scissors in that one place. And then once you have 10 pairs of scissors there because you keep buying more because none of them ever end up in a home because they don't have a home, then you can say, okay, I've proved to myself that like the scissors live here. And look, I've got 10 of them. Do I need 10 of them anymore? And gradually you can start letting go of all of the stuff you have because you're starting to prove to yourself that like things can have home. So yeah, I totally have a junk drawer and it is full of junk, but organized junk. Like the stuff that I need. I can tell you everything that's in there too, because like I used to think labels were not worth it, but I'm like, no, labels are everything, especially if I'm organizing it and I need to communicate with my family what goes where. But it's helpful because I can tell my kids, like, hey, go get the tape. And they know exactly where to look because it's labeled and that's where the tape is. And it sounds a little OCD the way I'm saying it, but like it took me a minute to get here. So this is like advanced level stuff. It's okay that your junk drawer isn't meticulously put together. Just figure out what you want to go there, and start really small when it comes to that.
So it's interesting, about asking the right questions. Like, where would I go to
Heck
find
yeah.
this? So yeah, it's been definitely a pleasure and very informative. And
Yeah.
thank you for coming on. Is there anything you would want my listeners to know about you or how to reach you before we shut down?
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in organizing at all, please listen to my podcast. It's Organizing the ADHD Brain. I'd love for you to share it with anyone you think could benefit from it as well. That's so helpful. Um, my membership is for women. So if you are a man, that doesn't mean you can't reach out or listen. But the membership that I have for my community is for women only, just to like support them in getting their homes decluttered. But if you are interested in a one-on-one decluttering session, I do that as well. It's virtual, so I help you work through a space, and then I give you step-by-step actions to take afterwards, to truly help you understand how to get control, but also how to make it a space that works for you and not for something that could work on television or something that your mom did or your grandmother did, right? Like it's something that works for you specifically.
Yeah, thank you. That's so awesome that you're a voice for women in the ADHD community that we
Thanks.
definitely need. And it's pretty underserved when it comes to
Yeah.
that avenue. And it's really good to see somebody like you step up and really, you know, open up and
Yeah.
speak your
Thank you. I
mind
appreciate it.
and speak up about it, speak out about it. That's so awesome. So before we go, are you a Star Wars fan?
Oh yeah, I like Star Wars. Uh-huh.
Okay, nice. So who would you say is like the most organized character?
Oh, good Lord. Um, it's so funny. I would say that like the illusion would be C3PO because like he seems like he would have it all together, but I feel like he's so scatterbrained. He'd probably be the one that has ADHD. If I or is just like so concerned about everything that could happen, like the anxiety. Um, but I would say I don't know, maybe Queen Amidala because she's got so many people working for her. So she's organized um by default because like she's so powerful. Also, she was able to switch places with another human and like organize that, facade for so long that nobody even noticed. So I would say, yeah, Queen Amidala plus like Natalie Portman. I mean, how can you go wrong with her?
Yeah, I think it was Russ who said that C3PO had ADHD. They like programmed him with it.
Right? Like that's rude.
Yeah,
That's really funny.
I know, right? So I would say maybe Princess Leia is pretty organized. I mean, she's
Yeah.
like the face of the rebellion. She's got to organize a lot of different things, and
Ah,
she's so powerful. Like, she literally choked out Jabba the Hutt.
oh,
Like,
that's
that's not
so
an easy
true.
thing to do. Like, people don't really, respect that or
Yeah.
acknowledge that as much as they should. It kind of brush it off. Like, she's pretty badass. She's like a Hut Slayer.
Yeah, she's pretty powerful. Absolutely. That's awesome.
All right. Well, that was great. Thank you for coming on the show and imparting some wisdom to our listeners. Take care.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was so fun. I love the rapid fire questions. Those were so cool.
Again, thank you for listening. And yeah, as always, if you want to contribute and help, there's my Patreon. Any little bit goes so far. And the more that you give, the more that you get. Just check it out at patreon.com/Ron Sowers. That's patreon.com/RONSOUERS. And as always, subscribe and may the source be with you.